I set the levels. If you
So
would
just my life and my work, okay. I'm Alvin Jackson. I am, for the past 3 years, have been here at Park Avenue Christian Church as a senior minister here. And before that, I was in Washington, D.C. for 8 years at a congregation there. Before that, 20 years in Memphis, Tennessee.
And where are you from originally?
I'm from Mississippi originally.
Okay,
a little small Delta town, Indianola, of the Delta of Mississippi. I left there after high school and went away to a small church college out in Southern California, Chapman College, and then I did my seminary and graduate work at Duke.
Right. Was clerical work? I mean, did you know that you wanted to be a clergyman?
No, I was going to college planning to go into law, and I was a pre-law major. And while I was in undergraduate school, got introduced to the 8th century prophets, Amos, Isaiah, Hosea, Jeremiah, and their strong commitment to social justice. And I thought that was maybe a way of kind of changing the world with ministry. So I switched to ministry.
Yeah. So what were the crucial years for you in terms of your own kind of coming to consciousness, both as a religious person, but also as, I guess, a political activist of sorts?
Well, I grew up, of course, in the 50s and 60s in the Delta of Mississippi, so kind of right there in the center of the civil rights movement and with the freedom riders. And I remember meeting Fannie Lou Hamer and Martin Luther King in 1967, a little square, little courtyard square in Enola. And so there was always, I mean, from early, as a teenager, I've always kind of had that sense of wanting to be a part of social change and to be a part of the movement. And but it was that introduction to the 8th century prophets in the late 60s, around 68, and after King's death and Robert Kennedy's death, that I protesting the Vietnam War, being arrested in the water fountain, little square in Orange, California, protesting the war in Vietnam. So just kind of being all caught up in that.
And then, and how was it that you ended up coming to New York?
After 8 years in Washington, this congregation they were struggling, dying congregation, and called and asked if I'd be open to coming and serving here. And so that has been my ministry, kind of going into places and kind of being a part of transformation. So I took the challenge.
Yeah,
I took the plunge.
So, well, I'd like to maybe in a minute talk about New York and kind of the way that the city has been weathering the current crisis. But first, let's talk about Obama, especially kind of coming out of this deep background of civil rights work that you've been engaged in over a period of decades. Can you reflect a little bit on, I guess maybe the months before the election, maybe through the primary cycle, when as it became clear that he was in fact going to be the nominee, and just how you experienced that?
Well, of course, I was caught up in the excitement of that, very active in campaigning for his election. So there was just I guess maybe it was a while before I really, because initially I was a strong supporter of Hillary Clinton, and because I thought Obama couldn't win, I didn't, and then I have younger sisters who are about 15 years younger than I, twin sisters, and from the very beginning they were strong Obama supporters, and they were the ones who really were responsible for kind of pushing me out there, getting there. And so I was caught up in all the excitement and hope of that. I was at Grant Park on the night of the election. I flew to Chicago to meet a friend there, and out there at Grant Park, 71 degrees on the 4th of November in Chicago, Illinois. It was really something. So it was just it was a wonderful moment, and just wonderful to kind of be a part of that moment.
Do you remember the first moment when you really started to think that he was going to win?
I don't know whether I remember the first moment, but I mean it was early. It was during the primary. I think South Carolina was the when after he won when he won Iowa and then came back and lost in New Hampshire. I mean, it was kind of around that time that I started really kind of thinking that this very well could happen. This very well could happen. Yeah.
It was a bitter primary season in so many ways. Was there anything that happened along the way that changed your own feeling about Clinton?
Well, I was disappointed, and I think I understood it intellectually, but I was disappointed with the way the race thing was kind of played there. The South Carolina primary was really not good, so I was a little disappointed with that. The Clintons had been kind of right there, and they saw the black community kind of peeling off supporting Hillary, and they were really frustrated. But that was Bill Clinton's response, and some of that was kind of disconcerting for me.
So let's now kind of keep moving forward
Okay.
to the inauguration. And your reflections on that, and then if you can talk about your experience of this first year plus change of the Obama administration, and kind of how you've seen it, how you've experienced it.
Of course, the inauguration was very exciting. I had planned to go to Washington for the inauguration and decided that I probably had a better seat in front of the television, so I watched it at home. But it was a great beginning. This first year has been. I have a number of friends who are really who are really disappointed and who are discouraged about the Obama administration. The decisions around the additional troops in Afghanistan, and the not being as aggressive on the public option with the health care reform, and so just a number of things. There are a number of areas that the progressive community has really been very disappointed, and I understand that. But I guess a part of me, I mean, I'd like for him to be a little bit more out there, but I think I also understand the difficulty of governing in a country like this, and I'm still very, very hopeful and very supportive of this of Obama's presidency, and I think that he is. I think that he's a lot more of a. He's not as much a progressive and liberal as maybe some of us have thought him to be. I think he's more, kind of a nuanced, moderate kind of thing, and I think that's just kind of a part of who he is. But I'm still very hopeful about his presidency, and I think we missed. I think that Obama and the Democrats missed an opportunity last year to get health care reform passed. I mean, we should have gotten it done before the summer, before the Republicans and these reactionary groups got out there and just demonized, the Democrats and demonized this whole thing. And so we should have gotten it done. We should have gotten it. An opportunity we let pass us by. And I don't know. I mean, it's going to be tough getting it done now.
Yeah.
And,
has there been anything that has surprised you that you've seen in the opposition to Obama in this past year?
Nothing. I mean, I've been disturbed by some of the things. I can't say that it has surprised me. I mean, I think that this country. Some of these groups out here who just really are trying to almost say that is not even legitimate. I mean that he wasn't born in the country. He's and this and that. So I mean none of that has surprised me. It has disappointed me. It has disturbed me. But I have not.
You kind of knew that there was going to be some version of that coming down the pike.
Something.
Yeah. You used the phrase a minute ago. You said a country like this. Can you say a little bit more about?
Well,
where are we? Where are we as a country?
I see us. I mean, I think we really are a. It seems to me that our whole structure is. We're structured to do things slowly and rather conservative moves. I mean, we don't. I mean, the way the Senate is structured, with this crazy. This 60%, these 60 votes needed to do it. I mean, it just almost. It's and though they've not always done things like that, but it just makes it very difficult to do anything with that kind of setup. And I mean, but I think that's kind of the way this country is. It is not we're not as liberal and progressive as maybe some of us like to think we are as a country. I think we are fairly. This is a fairly conservative country. I mean, and so, I mean, and so it's very difficult. I mean, it's very difficult to govern a place like this. And so, maybe I'm being more sympathetic than I should be, but I and I kind of have some sense of that on a very small scale as I work with a congregation like this that's very a multicultural, very diverse congregation, and you've got people kind of all over the place. And if you're gonna move anything, you gotta. I mean, you can't make sometimes the big bold moves that you want to make without just blowing up the whole thing.
Right.
And so it does kind of. It's time, and to kind of build the coalitions, and so there be more nuanced, slower movements. So I think I understand that. So, I think this is the kind of place we have here.
Does the election of Obama itself tell us something that we didn't know about who we are? I mean, I've talked to some people who have said they never thought they'd see that in their lifetime. And when they did, it made them kind of reevaluate kind of what has been going on for the decades really since the 60s. And suddenly that whole period looked a little bit different and a little bit less maybe despairing than it was experienced at the time. There was some kind of a rumbling going on under the surface that was deeply important. I've had other people tell me, you know what, I thought that for a second, but it turned out the election of Obama didn't really mean that much in terms of what's possible and where we are. I've had people say the real power is corporate power anyway, and the important decisions are made above the pay grade of the White House. I mean, which is it's whether or not you agree with it, it's a a compelling formulation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see just not Obama or his politics or his abilities to kind of put together a winning coalition, but just the fact of a black president? Does that tell us? I mean, does American history look different because of that?
I think without a doubt it's a watershed moment. I think it's a watershed moment in American history. I mean, it's a watershed moment, and I think only time will tell whether it's a symbolic moment or whether it's really whether it's really a substantive moment or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a watershed moment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the fact that it happened.
Uh-huh. Do you see that reflected in your congregation? I mean, in terms of how you were describing this really diverse group of people who you are close to on a certain level, and see regularly. What's your sense of their response to this?
I think there is still among African Americans in the congregation a great deal of pride in Obama being elected president. I mean, that is, many of us who, came out of the South and came through the movement days. I mean, it is just tremendous pride that this happened. I think, just talking about the congregation, I think among the more, progressive, liberal types, white types in the congregation, there's really a lot of frustration and maybe even anger about how slow things have come. I mean, because many of these folks thought well, Obama president, we're out of Iraq, we're out of Afghanistan, we got health care, we got public option, we got just to go through Guantanamo Bay is closed, or just to go through the whole list. And none of this has happened,
right.
And so there is really frustration and anger, on the part of many in the progressive movement, just in this congregation. But many black, I mean, we can't. We've been through. I mean, we can't give up on him quite yet.
There's another dimension of this I wonder about. How important is race, do you think, in Obama's kind of tactical political decisions? I mean, some people have made the case that, he can't be as forceful as he might be permitted to be if he were white. Do you think that that's an important dynamic?
I think that is. I think that is a dynamic. And I think that's... I think that's a part of. I think his whole campaign. I mean, he really ran away from race. I mean, he made the speech in Philadelphia and all that on race. But I mean, everything that he was doing in the campaign was really kind of running away from it. He wasn't really embracing this race piece. I mean, it was interesting to me, even the speech in Denver on the night of his acceptance speech at the Democratic Convention. I mean, just this slight mention, on the anniversary of the March on Washington, and this just ever slight mention of a preacher from Georgia or something. I mean, he didn't even call his name, so I mean, he ran away from it, and I think that's the way he's governing in a way too, and I mean, it's I believe that his I don't want to be like Bush looking and but I think that his heart is in the right direction. But I mean, tactically, I think that's the way, and I think it's true. I mean, he could not. Harry Reid got a lot of grief for the comment that he made that was in that the book, The Game Change. Right. But I mean, I think and called a racist and all that. But I think it was he was on target. And the comment about the reason Obama could be because he didn't have black dialect, he didn't, and so so that I think that's a reality. I think that's one of the realities of. So we're not as far along as we think we are on sometimes on this whole race situation.
And do you think? I mean, it was interesting what you were saying about the difference you see in the either patience or lack of patience among white progressives and black progressives. Is it among African American either activists or just citizens that you're in touch with? Is it your sense that the greater patience with Obama is because of the greater kind of emotional investment in his presidency, or is it also a kind of a keener understanding of the difficulties of being in the position that he's in and knowing kind of the waters that he has to navigate?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I mean, without a doubt, there's that whole emotional, cultural, kind of race thing, going on. But I think, among, many black progressives, I mean, there really is, really understanding that, I mean, it's really it's difficult waters that he has to maneuver through. And so I think maybe we're willing to kind of give him a little bit more time, and maybe a little bit more patient than some others are.
Okay. To shift gears a little bit, can you talk about whether you want to call it a crisis or a collapse or whatever, but the economic dimensions of what we've been going through these last 18 months, 2 years, and particularly how you see that reflected in the life of the city as you find it, both from your pulpit but also just walking around the city and how you observe it.
Well, there are a lot more homeless people on the streets, a lot more people sleeping on our doorsteps here. Here we are, one of the most privileged, one of the wealthiest zip codes in the city, and there is really a major spike in the number of homeless folks around. And I mean, the city, we one drop-off center here for the homeless, and it recently closed, and so we see that we have a lunch program on Saturdays where we serve several hundred folks every Saturday. We've seen a major increase in the number of people who are coming through. So I mean, so there are a lot of folks who just who are really kind of falling through the cracks there. On the other hand, we've also seen a major, just as a congregation, we've seen a major increase in worship attendance. And I think maybe some of that might be related to, people finding kind of this quest for meaning and, trying to make sense of all that's going on. And all kinds of people have been coming. And even, I mean, this church has been located here since 1945, this location. And we've never really had a real strong relationship or connection with people who live around us here. Most of the folks here are kind of working, middle class, educator types and artists types. And so there's not really been a real connection.
So from uptown and from downtown?
Some from uptown and downtown, and Brooklyn and Queens and places. People. So most of our folks commute in, but in the last year, we've seen a lot more people coming who live in the zip codes around us here, which has been interesting. And I think maybe that has something to do with what's going on with the economy and with the downturn.
And then the church itself, I don't know how much you're called upon to work on kind of fundraising kinds of concerns, but how has the shifting landscape affected the church as an institution?
Well, actually, there's been an increase in giving. And I mean, there have been studies done that when the economy goes south, often there is an increase in the offerings in religious institutions, and I mean that's not been across the case in every place, but particularly if you are making an effort to reach out and to kind of meet people and meet needs in the community, it's a funny. I mean, it's an inverse kind of a thing that happens, and so we found. We're probably up 15% from the year before in giving to the congregation. Yeah,
that's interesting.
So that's happened.
So, what are you described yourself as being very hopeful.
And maybe it's just foolish, but on my part, I'm just.
So
I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But I do wonder. I wonder kind of how you understand your own hopefulness. I mean, what are the things? What are the things that you see as hopeful signs, or how do you explain your own hopefulness? To your congregation, for example. I mean, how do you generate hope in a moment like this?
Well, I think part of my hope it comes out of my faith and out of who I am as a person, and I've always, I mean, even through and that really ultimately has nothing to do with who's in the White House or who's in the Congress, I mean, growing up in the Delta of Mississippi, I've just always felt that individuals and groups of people working together that we can change our communities. We can make a difference. We can have an impact. And so being a part of groups like the New Sanctuary Movement and Manhattan Together, and groups that are reaching out to the immigrant community, groups that are working on affordable housing in the city. I mean, I mean, those are the things that give me hope. I mean, activists, community leaders, and activists who are kind of just working to improve their neighborhoods or improve their blocks. I mean, I think that's where the rubber really meets the road.
Right.
That's kind of where my hope is. And,
Let's go back to those early years in the Delta before the Kings and the Hamers came along in your life. I mean, who were the people who were teaching you those lessons? And can you talk about your early years and kind of your kind of moral and political schooling, I guess. Sure.
Well, I grew up, in this little community, Indianola, home of B.B. King, and all of about 12,000 people in this little county seat town where cotton was kind of king there. And my parents were public school educators, and we lived in this little segregated community. There was a railroad track that separated whites from blacks, and I mean it was a very clear demarcation. But in that little small segregated community, all of my teachers lived just within blocks of where we lived. The school principal, the doctor, the dentist, all black, and there was a lot of affirmation and support, and you've got to be twice as good in order to make it, but you can do it. You're just as good as anybody else, and you can make a difference. So those teachers and ministers and my parents, and it really wasn't until I left Indianola in 1969 and went to Southern California that I discovered that I was poor, deprived, socially, economically, and culturally deprived, because I never saw myself in that light. And got out there, and all of these people from all over everywhere, and you poor little thing, you poor little black boy from the Delta of Mississippi. But I never saw myself, because there was just, believe it or not, there was just all kinds of affirmation and support in that little community. And my story is really not that unique. I mean, but it's not that unique. I mean, there are a lot of folks who had that kind of experience. Even growing up in those, looking back at it, I mean, we were poor. We were very, and we were, culturally and socially and economically deprived in many ways. But we never saw ourselves in that term. And I think that fuels my hope and my outlook on life.
Do you ever go back to Indianola?
I do.
Tell me a bit about it. I mean, how much has that area changed?
It has not changed. It has not. It's maybe gotten worse because cotton is no longer a major crop there, and there's not any. There are no real jobs or anything there. So people finish high school and leave, and so it's a very. It's really a very sad place.
And so the people who are left behind, I mean, what is the basis of the economy now?
Government jobs. Most of the folks are public or professionals there are school teachers, and their catfish farming has become kind of a major part of the economy there. But people who really looking for work have to leave that area in order to find work. So really, there were about 12,000 folks when I was there. So it's probably like 9,000 or less now. So it's not growing at all.
There must be days when you walk out of this church onto the streets of the Upper East Side. You must just be in disbelief at the range of social settings that you have traversed in your lifetime.
I am. It's a long way from the Delta of Mississippi to the streets of Manhattan. So it is, it is. I am amazed.
Yeah.
And and just continue to try to search and find ways to to have a meaningful impact and to make a difference. I'm going back to Indianola this summer. I'll be 60 years old in July, and so I'm having a birthday celebration at the B.B. King Blues Museum there. They built this blues museum, and so having my friends, and my father died a few years ago, and so we're raising money, having people give money for a scholarship fund that we started at an all-black school there in Mississippi that we attended. So I was just there last year for the 40th anniversary of my high school 40th year reunion. It's interesting doing that.
Yeah. So what do you tell kids, whether kids in Mississippi, kids in New York, at a moment like this where problems seem so huge and so intractable, how do you engage youth with the idea that you yourself grew up with, that actually you can make an impact, that you can make a change, that there is power in the individual and in the community?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you impart that now?
Well, I just building relationships with them. One of the things that we started here last year, a youth chorale where we have a music education program here at the church, and it's an after school program, and so we're really reaching out to kids, particularly in Harlem and kids around us here, and so just because the music, sports, arts, those are the things that they're cutting out of public schools. And so it's churches and groups like this, synagogues. I mean, that we've got to kind of make up the difference here. So as finding ways to connect with young people and just kind of being involved. My wife and I, we have adopted a couple of kids that we kind of served as big brother, big sister to, and so it's just kind of as looking for ways to build those connections and those relationships, and really kind of share with them what my teachers and aunts and uncles and folks in that little community shared with me when I was growing up. And the greatest gift is a gift of presence with folks. I mean, it's just kind of being with people and trying to model it. So.
Well, you've been very generous with your time. Is there anything that you feel we should have talked about that we haven't?
No, I think I've just rambled on here, so I can't think of anything else.
Well, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and I 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 thank you.